Good morning. Welcome to our 67th Coffee with the Commissioner event. Glad everyone got up early for us. We're going to have a really fantastic show this morning, and we're going to talk about COVID-19. It's a very relevant topic as we hear about Omicron making its way up to, I believe, 20 states now. We hear about that. It's the number one thing we hear every night on nightly news. So we've assembled a group of physicians to discuss this, local physicians, and many of them have various opinions about the treatments and some alternative treatments. So I can't wait to talk to these professionals about this topic. First and foremost, I'm going to introduce each of them. This morning, we have Timothy Boyette. We've got Dr. Mai-Hong Nguyen. We've got Dr. Mahaffey. I don't see her yet. We'll see if she can get her up on the screen. And then, of course, we have our County Administrator, Wes Marino, and we've got our Director of Public Safety, Eric Gilmore. What we typically do, you guys, is we give a brief update on county business, and then we go right into the topic of the day. So obviously the topic of the day is COVID-19, and we're just very fortunate to have frontline doctors who have been in this fight for the last year and almost 2 years now with COVID. And they've learned a lot and they know a lot, and they're going to pass some great information on to us this morning. So I look forward to that. So without further ado, Wes, we'll start with you this morning. You have an update on county business for us?
Hey, good morning, Commissioner. Sure, we're always busy here at the county. There's always a lot going on. And last week we had our last board meeting of the year, and so we're good to go between now and the end of December and the first part of January. But the board's accomplished a lot in the last 5-6 months. We are under contract with near about every union, with the exception of one. And that one union only has one article that's outstanding. There's really only one issue in that one article. And so we think we'll be able to resolve that in hopefully by mid-January and bring that contract to the board. And that'll wrap that up. We've covered wages throughout the county and increased wages throughout the county. And we're still working to see some results in that area, especially with corrections and public works. And I'll let Eric speak to public safety, but we've accomplished a lot. It is a huge accomplishment. We are still in the process of hiring some key positions here within the county, hoping to bring one to the board in January for ratification that I think is going to be just great. And it couldn't come at a better time because, as you know, once we hit January, I want to get the budget started early this year. We need to start early. We need to have a methodical process, a transparent process as we move through the budget. So we're already planning on that. And then just for the employees, I just want to wish them all a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. They have worked tirelessly. I know just being able to see it from this angle, it's a lot different to see all the vacancies we have and all the work that still gets done. And, we have some dedicated employees, and they do a great job here for the citizens of Escambia County. And to the board, I want to say Happy Holidays and Merry Christmas to y'all. Y'all have been so supportive, very supportive of the initiatives that have been brought forward. And I just appreciate you guys as well. So with that, I'll turn it over back to you.
Thank you, Wes, and we appreciate the update. And it is kind of weird to be sitting here on the 8th of December and we're done for the year. Of course, we're not really done, but we're done having public meetings. But every day there's, like you said, there's issues coming at us, of course. And one of the departments that's always busy, and I'm sure you're even busier than normal, is Eric Gilmore and running public safety between fire and EMS. How are things going, Eric? Give us an update on public safety.
Things are going great. Just want to echo Wes's sentiment about the employees, going over and above and beyond with limited people, helping them out, and they pick toe in the line. So no different here. Happy to report that we have 14 EMTs and paramedics starting orientation with us. These are new. So we're excited about bolstering our forces and getting more EMTs and paramedics on the road. We've hired several more firefighters as well. So that's exciting that we're getting our ranks up as we should. And looking forward to bringing those people on and helping the current staff out and get some manpower in the field. Some positive things that we've got going on that I'm excited about is back in June, the board approved us to buy ImageTrend, which is our billing and charting software for
Yes.
Well, it was implemented November the 1st. You guys heard no rumbles about it because it was a success. Within months, yes, sir. Everything, we had a couple of bumps here and there, new software and training in the field. The software is great because once it's dispatched, Our field crews get the dispatch CAD information. They chart it with the patient. It goes to the hospital. The hospital's been wonderful working with us because there's a hospital hub piece that they can see to get the software as well and update the patient information, such as billing, insurance, names, addresses, and then it goes to our billing here locally. And I'm happy to report that as of yesterday, we were only 1 day behind in billing, and we'll always be one day behind because they get yesterday's charts and bills to start today. So we're only 1 day behind, and that's the implementation of a new software. So that's been fantastic. It's cut down on work. It's made it more streamlined, and our seem to like it because it's a lot quicker process for them. So they're not having to do a lot of charting in the field. So that's exciting that we've got that, and we're going to put a press release out about that because last implemented a new piece of software for billing. It was kind of a debacle, as you remember. So
I do remember.
we're really happy that we got that across the finish line, and we had minimal hiccups on that. Some other things, and as Wes said, the board meeting wrapped up for the for this year. So in January 6th, we're happy to be bringing to you guys purchase of 3 additional fire trucks. Use
Right on.
the funds. And Chief Catrabone has done a fantastic job in working with E1 provider in finding what's being built right now for demo. And we could, if approved, we can get these 3 fire trucks as early as May, June, and July of this year, of this upcoming year. Not 18 months out like we've been told. So that will help us out because we do need to get those in the fleet as quick as possible. So that's coming to you guys in January. And also we was approved for 5 ambulances to bolster our fleet as well. Well, Chief Torcell has done his due diligence, looked at the 550 chassis, and with doing some maneuvering, instead of 5 trucks, we're going to turn it into 8 trucks.
Wow.
Absolutely. So we're, those 2 guys have done a phenomenal job at looking at cost, utilizing the resources and trying to maximize our purchasing power to help out the county. So those guys are phenomenal. We did have 2 major fires last week. One was a commercial. Everybody's selling Bayless. They worked diligently to get that out. It was multi-use, multi-commercial. Crews did a good job. Nobody got hurt or injured. And I want to thank the fleet guys, Wes's old crew out there at the road camp. Later that morning, fire was out and we was doing mop up, and we had a wall that was precarious. It was a cinder block wall, and it was kind of dangerous for there's no sense in risking anybody's, health to go in there and try to maneuver to do the hotspot. So we called the road camp, and they brought out a Great-All with the permission of the property owner, and the Great-All went in there and pulled the wall down and made it safe for our guys to go in there. So I appreciate those guys working with us and trying to make it safe for everybody. So that was phenomenal for those guys to come out there and help us out. So that worked out great. It saved a lot of man hours. We could cut a lot of crews loose because we didn't need all that equipment manpower because of that wall and the precarious situation. So we are in, our Keep the Wreath Green campaign. So
Yes.
we're putting bulbs on the wreath. And unfortunately, we have 6 bulbs at this point, residential fires. And these are fires that displace families. So every time you see a red bulb, a family has been affected. So the other fire we had last week, well, unfortunately, was an apartment complex. So that affected 4 families there because it was 4 apartments in one, and it affected four families in that complex. So that's unfortunate that happened. So we've got a lot of good things going in this upcoming year and throughout this month. Chief Catrabone is working on a big plan for equipment to fire trucks, as you asked.
Yes.
We're excited, and we're looking forward to meeting with you and the rest of the board.
Right on.
This plan through, show you what we've come up with. We're pretty excited. As I said, maximizing what we have and our resources, not a pie in the sky type plan, something that makes sense, something that shows growth and helps us try to grow with the county. So we're trying to keep it as common sense as possible. I know that's not much. Now you don't hear that much in government, but we're trying to. So anyway, and the last thing I'll end up with is even though, we're talking COVID-19 today, which is great because, it's still in the forefront. We got Omicron out there, and we're hearing that it's not as harmful as the Delta variant and everything, but we are still meeting with the hospitals monthly, just in case we hit some kind of weird variant where we get a huge spike. And of course, we want to keep the people out of the hospitals because that's where, once we start slamming the hospitals. So we're still meeting with our hospitals, and we've identified key things in which we'll ask the state from the monoclonal site to come back again, because that seemed to, if people can get treatment outside the hospital and keep them from going into a hospital, that's what we want to do. We don't want to slam hospitals. So if we can keep those hospitals decompressed and able to do their day-to-day and treat our 911 our patients that we take to the hospital and not hold our ambulances up while we're trying to offload.
Right.
That's what we want to do. So, so that's what's going on in public safety. We're really excited. And I want to wish everybody and all the employees in Escambia County a happy holidays, and the board as well. The board has been phenomenal this year in working with public safety, and it's been a huge turnaround. I appreciate you guys, the board, what you've committed to public safety, what you've done for us, and you can absolutely see the positivity and things that are going on in public safety. So thank you, sir.
No, I appreciate that. And thank you for wishing all the employees and everyone, happy holidays. That's good, because we're not going to have our committee of the whole. So this is maybe one of the last opportunities we can do it. So we do wish everyone a happy holidays. And Eric, thank you for you and your team and all the hard work you're doing. I mean, you picked up the job right when we were probably really struggling in the midst of it. And you jumped in as a leader, and we filled the positions. Now we got David Torcell, we've got Chief Catterbone. I mean, you're really moving things forward. And I look forward to the plan that you're going to bring. And I look forward to this year. I think we're going to keep the momentum going forward, but appreciate everything you and your guys are doing. And I look forward to seeing the school bus that you're going to turn into a mass transport vehicle. That is a cool thing. I want to see that.
I forgot to mention that we are building an ambu bus. You guys just approved us to receive the bus. We have the bus here, and Dave Torcell has went out and got a $25,000 grant from the state of Florida. So the $25,000 will help convert the bus into an ambu bus, so we could do a mass movement. So for patients on a mass casualty, or if we have to move patient from a hospital or evacuate. So yes, absolutely. So we're looking forward to that. That should.
Yeah, I want to see what that looks like. Now, how many patients can we transport in that thing when it's up and running, when it's going?
14 to 16 at one time.
Wow. Oh yeah, I want to see that.
Depending on the acuity of care, but we could put more if we need to, if they're low acuity, but 14 to 16, medium to severe acuity. So we're looking forward to that. It should be up and running. Hopefully we're trying to get it done by February, the latest. So.
Right on. Well, we look forward to that. Well, Eric and Wes, thank you so much for your time this morning. And now we're going to get into the meat of the program here and talk about COVID-19. Really appreciate you guys, what you're doing with the staff. And I want to thank again, our special guests this morning, Dr. Tim Boyette, Dr. Mai Hong Nguyen, Dr. Michael Cole, you're here, but your microphone's turned off. So you probably want to turn your mic on. And I believe we have Dr. Mahaffey. Is she here? I see a screen.
She's trying to get in, but she just texted me and said the passcode is not letting her in. So I just forward to her the email you sent me and see if she could use that passcode.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that should allow her to get in, and then when she joins, when she jumps in, we'll let her in, and we'll bring it forward. So very good. But in the meantime, we'll go ahead and get started, because there's a lot of folks have a lot of questions about COVID-19 here in the county. We've all lived through it around the country, around the world. But as a person in local government, somewhat unique perspective in that we've been pulled a lot of different directions in terms of what we ought to be doing, what we ought to be legislating. And I think the Board of County Commissioners of Escambia County has taken a pretty balanced approach. We initially we were asked to close the beach by the sheriff, the Escambia County Sheriff. He really urged us to do that. So we did that for a short period in the spring of 2020. We had a very, very strong push to make masks mandatory. The Board of County Commissioners chose not to make it mandatory, but we did a big campaign about masking up. Our counterparts over at the city chose to make it a mandatory thing. So, from my position as a policymaker for a local government, we've had a unique perspective into it. But I will say in March of 2020, just as the thing was taken off, I was able to have as my special guest, Dr. John Lanza, who at that point was the head of the Florida Department of Health in Escambia County. Really a fascinating discussion. And at that time, that was before the real push for the masks. And I had an online comment from a lady who worked at a grocery store that said, look, with COVID coming around, should I be wearing a mask, to protect myself? And I remember it was fascinating, because Dr. Lanza said, no. We never tell people to wear masks for protection. It doesn't work. It's ineffective. And I have that on tape. It's funny, a month later, they were like, everyone's got to wear a mask. So I always thought that was interesting. So that's the first question I want to ask of this panel. Why do you think initially everyone said you don't have to wear masks, but then it became almost like, verboten not to leave your house without a mask on? And I'll start with you, Dr. Boyette. Why that change? Why did that happen?
That's a great question, because majority of the pre-COVID literature on masking before COVID came on the scene showed that masking doesn't typically lower transmission appreciably. And so That is a great question. I think it's a question, obviously, for the public health experts that are giving all the recommendations. I certainly think during a time of questioning and wondering what kind of bug we're dealing with, it was reasonable to consider using masking when we didn't really know what else was going on. But as it's kind of progressed and as things have kind of evolved, we've learned more about this virus. And a lot of it has to do with droplet versus aerosol. So a droplet is blocked by mask, but aerosol, which is what we now think this virus is composed of, is that it's transmitted in aerosol. It passes through the masks. And so there may be a component of virus product that does get blocked by the mask. The question is how much and how effective is it in lowering transmission? But a majority, or actually I would say the great majority of literature prior to COVID-19 shows that with influenza and other respiratory viruses very similar to coronaviruses or COVID-19, that masks don't typically lower transmission. And so that's so the reason why things change, I'm not quite sure. I really not. And so maybe some of the other doctors would have an opinion on it. I know Fauci initially mentioned that he was not recommending masking back in March or April of 2020, but then went back and I believe stated that that was a noble lie. He just didn't want to cause a rush on masking
On the
that would take
PPE,
away
right.
and PPE from hospitals. And so it's such a controversial issue. But I think we forget about the long-term ramifications of short-term fixes that make us feel good.
Bingo.
And that's what my concern is that we forget about the other health empowering things like lowering sugar in diet, optimizing vitamin D3 level, optimizing hydration, and then treating people like adults that say, hey, if you're sick, don't come to work, because the majority of people who transmit this illness are ill. Asymptomatic transmission is theoretical, and there's evidence that there is some asymptomatic transmission, but it's very minimal. So the whole reason for wearing a mask at a school or in a community setting is to diminish asymptomatic transmission from someone who doesn't know they're yet infected. So that's where you kind of go, okay, well, if we're reasonable adults, we don't go to the store if we're ill and hacking on people, because that's where you fit it.
Unfortunately, Doc, people are not, and they're not responsible, and they're very, frankly, if I'm speaking very honestly, folks are self-centered and selfish, and not necessarily because they just want to be that way, but they need the paycheck. A lot of folks don't have the luxury of days off. When I worked as a bartender working my way through college, I didn't get days off, and you take the Dayquil and you go do it. You never call in sick, but I've learned a lot since then, and I'm sure some things that I did when I was young were not smart, lots of them. But Dr. Coyle, I'm gonna swing it over to you. Please give us an introduction. Tell us who you are, what you do, and then I'd like your perspective on the masks and how that debate erupted.
Absolutely, and thank you guys so much for having this morning. I'm really excited about it, and I'm definitely probably different than the doctor you got on there right now. I'm a urogynecologist. I own Coyle Institute. Been in private practice since 2004 here in. Started out in Milton and then kind of moved my offices on Scenic Highway. So as a urogynecologist, I'm primarily a surgeon. The reason that obviously that I'm interested in this is just simply because I do agree with Dr. Boyette is that there has just been so much let's do this without really any scientific basis behind it at all, and you kind of have to wonder, is this more of a way of managing people or trying to control people to kind of follow a certain paradigm that you want them to follow? But yeah, I'm a local surgeon. I have privileges at all the hospitals. And, as far as masking goes, I agree. I mean, early on when we really didn't know what was going on, it makes sense that, all right, well, let's protect ourselves and protect people around us. And certainly, our patients, we want to protect our patients as well as our family. But then as we learn more about the mechanism of the COVID virus, we just realize that masking is not actually stopping transmission. It, as a matter of fact, I think it is causing more psychological damage than than anything else. Specifically masking these children and forcing these kids. I see it still today where these kids that are 3 and 4 years old are walking around with masks on,
Crazy.
and it's just this push. It those kinds of things, you know, when I look at it, I'm like, all right, well, one, this doesn't make scientific sense, and two, we're actually causing more harm by the things that we're doing. And so that's why I'm very passionate about, you know, whatever I can do to help. I'm not like some of these other doctors where I'm you know, front line of taking care of COVID patients. I just, you know, want to take care of, you know, my patients that I'm taking care of, but I also want to have access to the hospitals and be able to do the surgeries that I can do. And that's another thing that is just really, you know, as a matter of, I don't want to get into too much craziness, but the thing is I'm definitely concerned about how physicians and nurse practitioners and medical personnel have been treated through this whole process, where we have local hospitals that I have friends that I've known for years that have worked tirelessly for years and get fired because
Yeah.
they choose to not be vaccinated, you know. And so
Doc-
Go
Dr.
ahead.
Coyle, let me ask you on that, because that lets me transition to a very important point. About, I don't know, about 8 months ago, maybe 10 months ago, I had one of these events and I had all three hospital directors. I had Gay Nord, I had Don Rudolph, and I had Mark Faulkner. I mean, it was the brain trust. And we were discussing the vaccines. At that point, they had been rolled out 2, 3, 4 months. And I just kind of threw out a question, and the answer I got was unexpected. And when I found out, I asked, I said, well, what percentage of your staff have been vaccinated? Because by that point I had had my second shot, and most people I know got the shot because we were told to do it. And they said, well, about 50%. And my jaw about hit the floor. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. These are doctors, these are nurses, 50%. And I just remember I didn't really get a good answer. And of course, now we've seen what has happened with the mandates at the hospitals, and some people have had to walk those back. But let me ask you, Dr. Coyle, just briefly, and then I'm going to go to Dr. Nguyen. But why do you think there was hesitancy among doctors? Because people like me, lay people, are not medical professionals, we watch that and we go, wait a minute, do they know something I don't know? You know, it brings out the skeptic in you. What's your thought on it?
all right, well, hey, great, thanks. I appreciate that. And, you know, let me just kind of give it to you very simple. It has everything to do with science and research, right? I mean, we're scientists. That's who we are and what we do. And when you roll out something that has not been tested, not been tried, you have no idea what the long-term side effects of a vaccine that you just made is. We question that, you know. So it's like, this has just been created, and so I want to know what the long-term effects are going to be. And for this vaccine to be out less than a year and everybody's taking it, you know. And so from a scientific standpoint, I want to know what are the side effects? How is this working? It's different than as a matter of fact, it's not even a vaccine, right? So the thing is that we want to know why, and we want to know how. And that's what we didn't get, and we still don't have, you know. And it's absolute insanity now that we have, you know, doctors that are recommending for pregnant women to be vaccinated. I mean, you have no idea what this vaccine is going to do. And so that's why I was hesitant. And I think that's probably why the vast majority of us, you know, that are against the vaccine have said, hey, look, wait, you know, I want to know, you know. And
Yeah,
and so,
and I think that's a fair question. And I think it's a fair question. I think as a citizen, though, I think we've got a lot of mixed messages. I mean, every night on the news, you know, we're pounded with, hey, you know, get boosted, get vaxxed, now get boosted, and it's safe and effective,
exactly. And so the thing is that we have medication that have been around for years, you know, safely used on humans for 40 years, right?
Right.
And so you have a product that, you know, the side effect profile from, you know how it works, you know how it functions, and that has just been completely stopped. And
I want to get to that. I want to get to that because that's fascinating, and that transitions me right into Dr. Nguyen. And Dr. Nguyen, I have to thank you. You know, you've been in. Correct me if I'm wrong. You went to Johns Hopkins, one of the best medical schools in the country. nearly 2 decades as an emergency room physician. I mean, you've got a resume that's amazing. And when I got your email from you, I'll be very honest, you and I spoke on the phone, but I got that email and I'm like, something's wrong here. And I picked up the phone and I called you and we had a great conversation, but you've been doing this a long time. How did you what got you into this, looking into this COVID issue? Was it treating patients? I mean, what brought you into this idea that there could be other better treatments out there or more, effective treatments? What brought you into this?
Well, it's multifactorial. I had been in the trench at Sacred Heart ER dealing with COVID throughout 2020. Of course, the first few months, through April, maybe it seems, okay, we need to worry. But then after dealing it for about 3 months and then start reading things from Dr. Luc Montagnier and, like Dr. Cole said, we're scientists, we're physicians, we're scientists. We look at data and we look at research, and our data is not CNN or any of the news media. Our data is not FDA or CDC. We never look at them as guideline anyway. So throughout 2020, the more I treat COVID patient, the more I see that it's more or less flu. We have very bad flu year where lots of people die, lots of young people die from the flu. So then I start seeing data that there are effective treatment across the pond, India, Africa, then people use it, and even here. And so I start to question, why are we not using the early effective treatment more? I mean, by the end of 2020, Dr. Pierre Kory, I mean, he talked during a Senate meeting about ivermectin, and literally the man was blue in the face, upset that it was not more widespread. So that was concerning. And then when throughout 2020, I was reading from Dr. Luc Montagnier, a virologist in, in France who discovered HIV. And he had sound warning about these vaccine during a pandemic. So, I read that closely. And then, and that's why I just don't see the need for an experimental vaccine when we have early effective treatment that we can use. And then it's concerning when the hospital protocol came out and said we cannot use ivermectin. That was very concerning. So, and that's why, exactly what Dr. Cole said, that's why we didn't rush to get the vaccine. I mean, I was frontline. I would think that the entire emergency department staff would run to the line and get our vaccine if we thought.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought too. As a guy who's not a doctor, that's what I thought. And I will tell you, I was offered the vaccine in November, I want to say late November of 2020. We were among the first because we were government officials. And I said, no. I said, no, I don't want to jump the line. I want to wait till our public safety department and other officials, but I was offered it and I didn't. And then, a year ago, I went to San Diego for Christmas, and one of my lifelong, very closest best friends caught COVID. And this guy's healthy, strong, mountain climber, hiker, and it took him out within 2 weeks. And I remember texting back and forth with him. He was in a hospital bed in Redlands, and I said, what's going on? He goes, they're giving me remdesivir, but I can't breathe. And so when I came back to Pensacola, I got my first shot, and then I got my second shot in February. And, I didn't think anything of it because we're told, hey, get the shot, get the shot, get the shot. Now, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm going to just put that out there on the record right now. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I've got all my vaccines my whole life. My father was in the military, traveled overseas. I've got shots. I was like a pincushion. I got so many shots. So I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I am concerned about, and I'm willing to listen to anything that happens. I've had leg cramps since I've had the vaccine, and I had one that didn't go away, and I had to go have a ultrasound to make sure it wasn't an embolism. And I don't know if that has anything related to it, but I never had them before. So, I mean, and I've done some reading on it, but now I'm to a point, do I get the third shot? That's kind of where I'm at right now. He's
So let me answer that, put two perspective into that. So first off, when your friends pass away due to COVID, we're all victim of this, whatever this agenda, whatever is going on, because nobody should pass away from COVID, because if you didn't get ivermectin, then you didn't get the chance that you could have recovered from it. Okay, that's science now. I mean, there's data behind that. I mean, if you have COVID and you have severe COVID and you die from COVID and you had never been given ivermectin and vitamin D, C, zinc, and all of that, then you have been shortchanged. I mean, we as a medical establishment, we're not doing the right thing for the patient.
I agree.
well, and I want to get into that ivermectin.
Hurry up, she's gonna be here.
I want to get into that ivermectin discussion. First, I want to introduce Dr. Mahaffey. Dr. Mahaffey, I apologize. What is your first name? Can you hear us?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, hey, I'm so sorry, guys. Yeah, I finally got on, and then I have a son with autism, and I'm trying to get him ready for his school bus.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, I'm sorry, Jeff. What was the question? And thanks for having me on. By the way,
please introduce yourself so we can hear your full name and your credentials.
Yeah. So I'm Dr. Teresa Mahaffey. I am a pediatrician. I've been a pediatrician for 30 years. I trained in Chicago and San Francisco.
Fantastic.
And yeah, and so yeah. Anyway, I've been fighting this fight as well, and I consider myself a frontline doc because I've treated 3,000 patients with hydroxychloroquine and have not lost one patient.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and so I've had my license threatened by the American Board of Pediatrics, and I don't advocate for the shot for kids at all. Given the risk of myo and pericarditis, which is higher than we think. And anybody with any kind of sense would think about that, because when Pfizer comes out and says, we don't want to reveal our data for 55 years, you got to think something's going on.
And
So-
I want to ask you about that, because I heard that and I went and looked at it, and it is true, but it's as I read it, they're saying it's a manpower issue, that the documents requested under the FOIA, because we deal with a lot of that here at the county. We get public records requests, and I do know sometimes it's time consuming. It is kind of hard to hear that the federal government is going to take 55 years because they're going to give X number of thousand of pages per year for the next, because they don't want. So I think that's a setup. I think that's someone's trying to hide the ball and play a shell game. But that is true. I did research that, and I would encourage anyone who doesn't believe that to go look at it, because it's true. And the other thing I would say to that is they say only 10 employees in that department that do these FOIA requests. Well, I would say this: the way we're printing money, hire some staff and let's get these records out, because I want to read about it too. Again, that brings out the skeptic in people when they hear that. We want all the data on how you brought this mRNA vaccine to market, how you tested it. We want it all. Okay, we'll get it to you in 55 years. That's a problem. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted folks to know that I've looked at that, and others can.
No, that's good.
Teresa, they just
Well, even the
released
inventor-
the 2 months, right? They Pfizer did release the first 2 months of data from December to February.
They did, yeah. Yes,
And-
and there's a lot of questionable,
Well,
data in there.
Let me ask you something else, because this was really disturbing. I really enjoy these conversations because I learn a lot about a lot of different things, having folks like you on. And really, it's not just medical stuff. We do all kinds of different topics. But in this in particular, I would never have searched for the study for remdesivir. But my friend was given remdesivir and he died. And he was a very close friend, lifelong friend. And it really hurt. And so I as I'm reading about it, I come to find out, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but as I read it, when they did the clinical trials for remdesivir, the initial goalpost was, we want to see if this reduces mortality due to COVID. And then about halfway through, the people that were conducting the study realized that there was no measurable difference between the control group and those who were given remdesivir. So they changed the goalpost and said, well, let's change it to see if does it increase the time for healing. And I've read, and look, I'm not a scientist, you guys are, but I've read that that's highly questionable to do that. And that's unusual.
Shocking.
I mean, did you guys know that? Have you heard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. Does remdesivir work? Because it's expensive. Does it work?
No.
No, it's supposed to work only if you give it the first day, 24 hours. But most of these people come in at 7 days. And then the risk of renal failure is too high. Is it 1/3, Dr. Kaur, Dr. Boy? Yeah, it's pretty high. So no, I wouldn't use it. I wouldn't give it to any of my family member. But when I was in the ER, every single time patients come in and need to be admitted, the first thing I give them is the cocktail of ivermectin, DC, and all that. But then the first thing that the hospitalists do is they use the hospital protocol and they throw them on remdesivir, which is really mind-boggling to me, knowing the data behind remdesivir.
Well, let me ask a general question. I'm going to put this back to Dr. Boyette. Why the tribalism? When you have someone, for instance, here's a great example. Here's an example I'll put out. Throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there were certain people who believed in UFOs, right? And they were considered quacks. Okay, oh, you're a freak, cuckoo. Well, lo and behold, the government knew that there was something, and they put out videos, and they've actually said, look, we don't know what some of these things are flying around. Our fighter jets, they got videos out. Our fighter jets can't catch us. So guess what? The people who thought maybe there was something out there, maybe they weren't the quacks. I kind of see a similarity here. You've got people early on saying, look, there's this study in Australia that says if we give, we've looked at ivermectin in vitro, and it totally wipes out the COVID virus. And so, we've got this drug that's been, out there for decades, been given billions of doses. Why can't we use it? And those people are being ostracized. They're being made into pariahs. Why, Dr. Boyette, is there such tribalism among doctors?
I think it's a great question. And I think it brings up ideas of worldview, but it also brings up ideas of that there's such a massive information out there right now that sometimes we lose the forest for the trees, and we try and we see a couple little things here and there and go, hey, we're going to bet all our marbles on this one thing, whatever it is in medicine. And so I can see it from both sides. Hey, because I've heard of patients that of course get one therapy and they do great, and one therapy and they don't do great, and vice versa. They may, in one or two patient cases, they may not do well with a certain therapy. I guess the issue is it gets back to, we need to have a discussion of honesty as far as the conflicts of interest out there with respect to what's taking place, but also empowering doctors to be doctors, to let us experiment with treatments that during a novel virus and a novel pandemic, let us kind of make decisions that in the confidence of a doctor-patient relationship that can empower our patients and to give them options to keep them out of the hospital. One of the biggest problems I saw early on with this pandemic, and I think any doctor would recognize this, is that in the worst pandemic in 100 years, our, I guess, public health description to patients is stay at home, wait it out. And if you get sick enough to go to the hospital in 10 to 12 days, then go to the hospital. Keep watching your oxygen sats, but don't give any guidance on vitamin and mineral therapy, lower sugar diet. I mean, lower sugar diet during a time of infection is vital, because if you have a high blood sugar during a time of infection, you're at much more risk for an adverse or worse outcome. So we're not even giving patients guidance on, hey, don't eat junk food while you're at home recovering from flu or COVID. Bone broth soup, meat, vegetables, low sugar, lots of water, no juice. Don't eat a lot of fruit or juice because it's a lot of sugar. And I know some of these things are a little bit controversial to hear, but it's some basic, we've got to empower ourselves and let doctors kind of make decisions that can help empower our patients, because our patients are begging for it.
They're begging for it.
To hear that you get COVID and you're on day 2 and go, okay, well, I'm supposed to be at home in quarantine for 10 days. And if I get sick enough to go to the hospital, well, shoot, if I go to the hospital day 10 or 12, I'm hearing people are not doing well. And that's
right. They're putting them on the ventilator and then they're on the way out.
Exactly. So, and that's what's so interesting is, hey, I want to try and find, I think these other doctors that are alongside with us want to just empower patients. So from day 1, whenever I got COVID, I went on an early treatment protocol. So I did the research. I didn't get the vaccine straight out of the box, just like yourself. I got COVID back in February of 2021, and I went on an early treatment protocol protocol through care from another physician colleague of ours, and I was better in 72 hours. Now I'm one case, but I was moderately ill, and it never got to my lungs because I
Yeah.
hit it with a bunch of things. And this is how I treat patients, and I haven't had a single patient go to the hospital with COVID in my experience as well.
Well, that's an amazing testimony right there. And there's so many questions that I want to ask, but I want to kick it back to Dr. Coyle because I want to ask him about this. I'm hearing now, and like I said, researching for this, that doctors in other parts of the country and even here locally are being told they can't prescribe ivermectin. And I don't want to know why they do things like they've done to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan didn't take the horse paste. He was prescribed the tablets, the 10 milligram, whatever, 3 milligram, whatever they are. And why are they ridiculing a drug that's been out there for many, many years? And now there's meta-analysis online. You can go find it, and you can see there's no question. I'm not a scientist, but I can see everything's to the left of the line. It's effective. Green to the left of the line, a few outliers in the red. So why, Dr. Coyle, do you think that they're telling doctors, no, you can't prescribe it, even though it's safe? And it's a medicine that is very, very safe, billions of doses given throughout the world. Why are they doing that to doctors and second guessing them?
Well, that's another great question. And unfortunately, it's probably going to take years for all of this to kind of come out. But the vast majority of us feel as though that this is a way of manipulating and controlling the populace. And so the thing is that, the powers that be have a plan. And that plan is to make this vaccine and make sure that they are able to use this vaccine. Look, we're not just talking about the United States. We're talking about the entire world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the entire world has been programmed down one path: mask, isolation, and then take this vaccine. Like we were talking about, I mean, it's an experimental vaccine. So the thing is that the answer to that question is very tough, but it just seems like it has to do with control.
Control thing.
The crazy part is that, obviously we all have very good friends that are really, really smart people, but they are on the other side of this to the point to where I'm like, why are you thinking about this? Why aren't you looking at it? And it's just kind of like, let me just follow what everybody else is doing. And so I really, to be honest with you, I don't know, Jeff, I don't know the answer to that question. And I ask myself that every day is when I'm talking to colleagues and I'm like, I will tell you this, and this is me talking. All right. And so
Yes,
the people are not dying from COVID like is being reported. People are dying from our protocol. Okay. And so I honestly, I think the vast majority of us would agree that if people are treated early and appropriately, they don't die from COVID. Okay.
And that's perfect. I want to segue into that because I've gone to earlycovidcare.org. I've looked at FLCCC and I've seen that there's a math and then there's a math plus protocol. And those have been out there for a while.
Yes.
And, I look, I'm a nerd. I stay up late and I read. And I followed it up and I read some of the studies and I read about Africa, sub-Saharan, where they had to use it prophylactically to prevent river blindness. Now, suddenly, I mean, you can look at a chart. You don't have to be a statistician. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a scientist to look at and read something in black and white. And so that's the thing that scares me. And that's where I want to go to Dr. Mahaffey. I really
Hey guys, real quick. I just wanted to say, thank you so much for this time. I do have to run. I got surgery this morning.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate your time and, thank you. And God bless all of us and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for being with us, Doc.
Yes,
Good
sir.
luck in the surgery. Thank you. Well, so Dr. Mahaffey, I want to ask you this. So much is made every night on the news. The guy gets on there with a serious face. It's a very busy news night, but he talks about, the use of ivermectin, and it's not FDA approved. In doing some research though, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I got the doctors here. When the FDA approves something, they approve it for use for a certain disease or a certain condition, but they do not say you can't use it for something else. And it's my understanding through reading that about 30% of what actually gets prescribed are drugs that are like off normal use. So in other words, gabapentin is for this, but we prescribe it for this. Rapamycin is an anti-rejection drug, but some people prescribe it for, you know, prophylaxis for cancer, life extension. And then ivermectin comes in, safe, effective. Is it true that when an FDA drug is approved and deemed safe and effective for a certain treatment, it can be prescribed for anything, it just can't be advertised for other uses? Is that
Right.
not?
We
Okay.
do that in pediatrics all the time. So
So how come the media is, vilifying this drug that's safe if it appears from all these studies that I'm looking at that it has some antiviral properties? Why? Is it all about money, Dr. Mahaffey?
yes. In a word, yes. I cannot believe, I am absolutely dumbfounded when smart people like what Dr. Coyle was saying go along with all this, because I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't done it myself. So I've written scripts for ivermectin. Like I said, I've treated 3,000 people with hydroxy and the FLCCC protocol. No one has died. No, I have one patient who actually had a pulse ox in the 70s, and I treated him with that cocktail along with some prednisone and budesonide, and he got better. So he ended up in the ER down in Gulf Breeze, and they asked him, they told him they were going to put him on remdesivir, and he denied it and went home, and he got better.
Wow.
This is a guy that died, but he didn't. But anyway, back to your question. So we use off-label, we call it off-label, use for things all the time. Like in kids with ADHD, we put them on clonidine at night, which is a blood pressure medication, and that's to help them with sleep. Or we use guanfacine for tics and other things, which is also a blood pressure medication. But yeah, you can use medications off label. And so I don't understand this whole fight with ivermectin either.
Well, let me ask you, and the other thing I wanted to ask, there's two big issues that a lot of people have asked me, and in talking in your social circles, it seems like there's a cabal, and it's an organized cabal against any kind of out of the ordinary approach to this pandemic. I mean, and it's the media, it's the pharmaceuticals, it's political, and it's the media, it's the some of the doctors, the hospital establishments, and to me, I don't understand that. And it just can't be about money. I mean, I saw a report that all the hospital corporations, of course, you see frontline workers, they show them exhausted each day in their PPE and we can't take it. But the hospitals are making record profits, billions, record profits last year, record profits. So, we can't lose sight of that. People are making money. Pharmaceutical industry is making record profits. So again, the question comes back to, can it really be about money? If ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and these other drugs, vitamin D3, melatonin, zinc, I take supplements. I read all about them. I take a lot of supplements. If that's out there and it's inexpensive, is it criminal what's happened here? Is it criminal what's happened?
Yeah, it is. And the main criminal is Dr. Fauci himself.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and suddenly that guy's the sage of everything. I don't know, whatever he says.
Don't get that too.
Oh gosh, before we ended all this, can I just put in this data? I mean, no matter what we believe in, and the fact that you use the word cabal, I think very appropriate at this point. But I mean, the data doesn't lie. I mean, look at the data from the VAERS report, CDC, and also the European database. I mean, European database as of November 20th, there has been 31,014 deaths from the vaccine, all vaccine combined, and there has been 2,890,600 adverse reaction. Half of that, I believe, are serious injuries. 1,355,192 are serious injuries. Now,
Dr. Nguyen, but let me ask you something. I have to interject this. I have to look, because when you look at VAERS data, that's a lot of that's self-reported, and in the reading that I've done, and again, I'm just new to the topic because I knew I was having this segment, but I read a lot. I did a lot of reading about it. They say that's very unreliable because it's self-reported, and oftentimes adverse effects could be anecdotal, not necessarily attributed to whatever virus or medicine that you take.
But I believe the CDC
Hmm?
does look at them. They don't just allow anybody to put it in there. I mean, on
Okay.
one hand, it is self-reported, but I think they do have a surveillance policy going on. They don't just allow anybody to put it in there. So, but why posted it if they don't believe in any of that? And then Harvard School of Public Health even said to take that number and multiply by 5 because it's completely reported. Because I can tell you, when I'm in the ER at Sacred Heart, nobody is sitting there reporting any of this adverse event. I mean, and talking about in denial, I mean, the word that Dr. Harvey Risch at Yale used is cognitive dissonance. And I think there is cognitive dissonance because there was a patient in her 30s who came in with new onset atrial fibrillation, and she just had her vaccine earlier in the day, and the doctors walked in and she said, "I think this is the side effect of the vaccine," and the doctor said, "Oh, I don't think so." Now that's
Interesting.
dissonance right there. But in our own data, as of November 26, 19,532 deaths and 927,000 adverse reaction as of November 26. I mean, we cannot ignore this kind of data. I mean,
No, I agree. No, I agree. That's why it's fascinating to have this conversation now, but I have to play devil's advocate a little bit with y'all. So, because some people were kind of like discouraging me from even having this conversation, but I'm willing to have a conversation with anyone about any topic, because I'm naturally curious. I have been my whole life. I was the guy in the class that would always raise his hand first or give the answer before I even was asked.
Can I bring up one point just before
Yes,
you bring
please,
it up?
please.
Just because this is a very important topic. There is such a centralization of power, and I guess I won't say control, because it makes me think, or makes people think that, hey, there's a group of people in one room, but there's just a centralization of resource and media distribution. That's what's so beautiful about the separation of powers and also the freedom of speech that the founders
Yes.
knew about in this country, is that individual ideas, then whenever they're vetted throughout the society, it allows for truth to rise. But if you shut down one set of discourse, that automatically, like you says, raises skeptics in some others, but then it shuts down just a discourse that could provide the best management system, whatever it is, a treatment or a vaccine or a surgery or whatever, by shutting down that one narrative, whether it's financial or what have you. But there has been a corporatization of medicine over the past decade, where a lot of small doctor groups, and I think Dr. Mahaffey would agree with this, she had the opportunity of going in with a larger hospital system, but chose to stay separate. And I think what you're seeing is a lot of the doctors that are treating these patients and are thinking outside of the box, which I won't call alternative. This is not alternative treatment. This is treatment. But, and so what I'll say though, is it's the doctors that are thinking outside of the narrative and just trying to do what's best for their patients. That's what we're thinking about, as the patients first. Our responsibility is to the patient, not to the insurance company or the hospital system. It's to the patient first.
And I love that. That's a great point. And gosh, we're almost out of time, but I have to get these other quick. So we're going to do like a lightning round. If you guys, I'll just go around and we'll just do short answers. Dr. Nguyen.
Yes.
50-year-old patient. I've got hypertension. I've not been vaccinated. And I've got some initial symptoms of COVID. I go do a rapid test. I've got COVID, but I'm really not too bad. I come to you. What would you say to a patient like that? And what should he do immediately? I
reassure him first, and then I will start him on ivermectin.
Now, what if the pharmacy says no? I've heard that they're not prescribing it. I mean, would there be
other ways to get ivermectin to my patient? In Florida, there's several compound pharmacy will prescribe that will dispense ivermectin. So I have sources. I have to have that source because I have been dealing with patients in like state like Colorado. They would not. You cannot find a single pharmacy that would dispense ivermectin in Colorado or California.
So you would start off on, is that the math protocol that you would be using?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay,
I have not had any problem with even 80-year-old. In fact, I saw one patient who's 82 also in the ER. I gave it to her. I gave it to her daughters and son-in-law, and I treat the husband at home too. So I make it kind of like I reach out to all the whole family unit because I didn't leave anybody out.
Right.
I read something yesterday, and this is going to go to Dr. Mahaffey. I read something yesterday about a hospital protocol. I won't name the chain, but it's a chain that you would know. It's a group that you would know, and their protocol was talking about the various levels and the stages that the patients go through. And it said initially that they're going to be hospitalized, and as their breathing gets worse, they don't talk about vitamin D, they don't talk about vitamin C. Of course, they don't talk about ivermectin or any of that. They get them to where they're so sick that then they get them on the remdesivir. It almost seems like, why are they skipping these early steps that Dr. Nguyen just mentioned? Why would they skip things? My understanding over in India, they had a $2 kit that had ivermectin, vitamin D. Why are we doing that? Again, does it all come down to the dollar, Dr. Mahaffey?
Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this, but yes, it does. And even in third world countries like Honduras, they hand out a COVID pack. They hand out either hydroxy or ivermectin with the vitamins and all that. So after doing this for 2 years, after giving out these kits to people, and I'm talking people from all over the world. I mean, our latest was somebody sent a bunch of kits to Iceland. We've sent some through missionaries to Cuba. You know, I don't get it because it works. You know,
I mean, not to sound like a moon landing hoax conspiracy theorist, but is that the problem, that it works? Because then they don't get sick enough to do the monoclonal and the remdesivir, the high dollar brand new stuff. I mean, could it be that sinister? I mean, I'm just asking for a friend.
Yes.
Well, I mean, people are going to call me
Look at
nuts.
history. That's what takes place, you know, but
Yeah.
that's again why I think the separation of powers and the freedom of speech is so vital to get back to that, hey, we've got to let doctors be doctors. We've got to let patients be advocates for themselves and empower them to then make better decisions. So, you know, I think that's what it gets back to, is that creative medicine is not algorithmic medicine. And that's what Dr. Mahaffey knows, Dr. Nguyen knows, that not every patient fits a box. You know, this black and white algorithmic medicine, that's why medicine's a practice and an art.
Right.
It's an art and a practice. It's not a hard science. It's based in science, but it's not a hard science. And we are fools if we think that medicine is a hard science. It's based in science. It's an art.
Unfortunately, I am dead smack out of time, but I cannot thank you folks enough. This has just been fascinating for my own enrichment. I greatly appreciate it. I'd love to have you guys on again if you'd be willing to.
Mr. Burgon, can I add one more thing though?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
At the beginning, when you said that this Christmas we have, you know, our area here is blessed because we're gonna be able to celebrate and everything. Well,
Yes.
if a vaccine works, then in a highly vaccinated population, we'll see either complete elimination of the disease or a significant decrease of its incidence, right? Well, please go look at the data all over the world. Gibraltar, 99% of its residents are fully vaccinated, and yet they're gonna cancel Christmas festivities because they have a surge of COVID in the country. And you see that all over the world, Gibraltar, Singapore, Germany, Ireland, Iceland, you name it. I mean, most of these countries are 60, 70% vaccinated, which would reach herd immunity like Fauci said, and yet there are a surge of COVID cases all over the place.
Dr. Nguyen, you are absolutely right. I was in Denmark. My son's studying there in Copenhagen. I was there in October. And I was fascinated because their population is very compliant, 86% vaccinated. The minute I got out of the airport, I took the mask off. I never put it on again. We went to restaurants, shops, cafes. It was wonderful, beautiful. Well, my son is coming back from Denmark on the 15th. His semester of study is over and they've locked it down again. They're back to wear masks. That was my question. Again, I'm not the scientist. I just watch the guy on evening news every night saying it's another busy night, you know, another crazy. And he's the guy telling me that about herd immunity and all this other thing. Well, if Denmark has a compliant population, 86% vaccinated, you know, what happened? I mean,
well, they said on November 12th, Denmark was stood at 75% vaccinated, and they on that same day they have 4,585 new cases of COVID-19, which is a country new case record.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I got to leave it, but one final thing. Do we ever get out of this, or does it keep going forever?
So we're getting out of this because I think I have heard early data that Omicron is actually very mild. It had mutated, and it actually one of those that will spread to the whole population with mild disease, and then everybody will get their natural immunity. So I think that's the good news. No
Fantastic.
fear.
Well, I got to leave it there, but I appreciate you all coming on. Thank you for your time and your insight and your expertise, and thanks for what you're doing out there for your patients. And I'm sorry that that you guys get ostracized the way that you do. Speaking of you, I mean anyone that goes against the orthodoxy of the day. I like people that are mavericks. That's why I love shows like this. So thank you so much for being here, and we'd love to invite you back if you'd come back. And y'all just have a great rest of the week, and thanks again for what you do.